Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Monday, November 18th, 2024, 3 p.m. public land use hearing. As is our tradition, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. My name is John Kafalis, Commissioner from District 1, currently the Chair of the Board of County Commissioners. I'm joined by my colleagues, Kristen Stevens from District 2 and Jody Shattuck McNally from District 3. Up above there, we have Deirdre O'Neill with the County Clerk and Recorder's Office. She has a very important responsibility, which is to record the minutes from this meeting, as well as to record the meeting. It's publicly broadcast and on the website. Across the way, we have Christine Luckison, with one of our assistant county attorneys, and a variety of other folks. I'll ask Jenny to introduce those folks, and then after so today we basically have 3 consent agenda items and 1 discussion item. After we're done with introductions, we'll have Jenny provide an overview of procedure, protocol, and anything else that is necessary. Then I'll go through the agenda and explain a little bit about consent agenda items, and then, of course, the discussion item. So with that, Jenny, would you be kind enough to introduce your colleagues there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm joined at the dais by Connor Sheldon from our engineering department. We have Sam Lasher from our planning group. We have Christina Scrutchins and Ryan Oswalden from our CERT team. They're our administrative support for this hearing. Across the way, I'm joined by Justin Curry from our planning group, David Pringle from our engineering group. We have Leah Schneider from the health department, and Michael Whitley also from our planning group. My name is Jenny Oxmacher, and I'm the planning manager, and we respectfully request that all members of the audience silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and hearing room procedure instructions, which are located on the wall just to the right of the hearing room entrance and are also posted on our website at larimer.org/BOCC/commissioners-meetings. Please wait to speak until you're recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive or negative. Please make all comments to the Board of County Commissioners from the podium. We do have a portable microphone available if needed. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments and provide the spelling of your name if it's unique. Please speak directly into the microphone so that the remote participants may also hear you. Upon request, we do have assisted listening devices available for the hearing impaired. For those attending on Zoom, you will be muted until you are recognized by the chair. If an online attendee wishes to speak or requests that a consent item be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar or *9 on your phone. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. So just a little bit more clarification, then I'll go through the list of the items that are before us. A consent agenda item is generally something that we have not received a lot of public comment. It's perhaps more routine, if anything can be routine these days, but it's more administrative in nature. And typically, unless one of us pulls an item off the consent or a member of the public pulls an item off consent, we do not have a full hearing on that particular item. There is a motion to approve everything in mass. So that's the difference between a consent agenda item, and there are 3 of those, and a discussion item. So with that, let me go through the agenda quickly, and then I will ask my colleagues if they wish to pull any of the 3 consent agenda items, and then we'll ask if any of you folks wish to do that. And also with regard to, let me go through the list really quickly, and then we'll see where that takes us. Are you all still with me? Pretty? Oh, good. So the first public hearing consent item is the Old Castle APG West Inc. Special Review and Appeal, file number 23-Zone 3541. Again, that is one of the items that we received information, and it's on the consent agenda. I will point out that a memo that we received just today, I think there's some discussion, and I'm sure we can explain that. But two of the conditions of approval, as I understand it, there was discussion with the engineers of the applicants and regarding drainage, and then another item so that we might modify those conditions of approval. So that is the first one, Old Castle APG West Inc. Special Review and Appeal. The second consent agenda item is the LPCO LLC rezoning, file number 24-Zone 3611. And the third consent agenda item is the West County Road 74E right-of-way vacation, file number 24 land 4447. And there is one discussion item which I will mention at this time, and that's where there will be a full hearing, and that is the Windcliff Estates Appeal, file number 24 GNRL 0558. So, with that, commissioners, do either of you wish to remove any of the three consent agenda items? All right. Then I would pose that question to you all in the audience here in person. Does anyone wish to pull any of those three items off of consent? A quiet bunch you are. Christina, would you check to see if there's anyone online who may want to push one of those items off the consent agenda?
If there's any members of the public who would like to remove any of those cases, please raise your hand now. No hands raised.
Okay. So then those items will remain on the consent agenda. And I will, perhaps, Christina, can you help us? Do we need to reference regarding the first item, the Old Castle APG West? It looks like there are two modifications to the original conditions of approval. Do we need to point those out, or how might the generic consent agenda motion be modified?
You can just incorporate the memo provided by staff. That's part of the record.
Sorry, your microphone, Mr. Gutstein.
Sorry about that. This is Christine Luckeson with the County Attorney's Office. You can incorporate the memo provided by staff into the consent agenda motion. So just adding that into that Old Castle approval.
Very good. So we'll cite the two conditions of approval, number 2 and number 9, and we'll reference the memo that we received today, the date of the memo.
Perfect.
Yes?
Perfect.
Okay. With that in mind, Commissioner Stevens, guess what? You're on. Would you please offer the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will. I move to approve the items on the consent agenda, subject to the conditions in the staff reports, and further move to authorize the chair to sign the findings and resolutions, and also will include the memorandum dated November 18, 2014, which includes revised conditions of approval for item number 1, the Old Castle APG West Inc. Special Review and Appeal.
And just to clarify, Commissioner Stevens, November 18th, 2024.
Oh, yes, November 18th,
Perfect.
2024, and the file number is 23 Zone 3541.
Perfect.
Is that satisfactory? Thank you. Colleagues, any further discussion or any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Therefore, those first three items have passed. A slight modification on the conditions of approval for the first one. And if you're here for those items, you are free to go. And congratulations to the folks in Loveland, to the folks in LaPorte, and the right-of-way vacation up by Glacier View Meadows. Have a nice day, all.
Turn those off. Turn yours off. Yours is on that. Sorry.
Okay, we now move on to the discussion item. Wincliffe Estates Appeal, file number 24 GNRL 0558. Samantha, I believe this one is yours.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'm going to just give a quick introduction and then I'll pass it off to
Of course, thank you,
Sam.
Jenny. I forgot, yes.
No problem. So I just wanted to remind the board and those of us joining from the public that this is the first time that the Board of County Commissioners has had an appeal of this type brought before them. With the short-term rental regulations updated in 2023, a new requirement for compliance with what is known as Appendix G or roadway standards was put into place. The applicants this afternoon are seeking approval from an appeal to not comply with some of these standards. Staff did not provide a recommendation on this item as it is a new topic to consider, but I will introduce Sam Lasher and Connor Sheldon to provide you with information specific to this request.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Samantha, please proceed. And a gentle reminder, please do your best to talk as much into the mic. Our Assistant County Attorney is a bit soft-spoken, and I just want to make sure I can hear everything properly.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you, Jenny. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Samantha Lasher. I'm a planner 2 with Larimer County, and I will be presenting the Wincliffe Estates Appeal, file number 24 GNRL 0558. The properties that are part of this application include 3147 Eiger Trail, 1479 St. Moritz Trail, and 1924 Wincliffe Drive. All 3 properties are located within the Wincliffe Estate subdivision, which is located in the Estes Valley. In general, the neighborhood is located approximately 0.3 miles east of the intersection of West Highway 66 and Wind River Trail. The applicant for the application is John Winner, and the owners of the 3 properties are John and Jamie Stevenson, John and Shannon Winner, and then Trey Garland. The professional engineer and surveyor that assisted the owners with their application is Lonnie Sheldon with Van Horn Engineering. The 3 properties are currently zoned EVE1S, Estes Valley Short-Term Rental. These properties, along with others in the subdivision, were recently rezoned from Estes Valley Estate to this new zoning district to allow for the continued historic use of short-term rentals. The combined acreage of the 3 properties are 1.75 acres. The existing land use is single-unit residential currently, and all 3 property owners are proposing to use their homes for short-term rentals. So before they apply for a short-term rental application, the owners have applied for an appeal to Article 335B2AA of the Larimer County Land Use Code, which is specifically cited further on the slide. This article contains short-term rental, local roadway, and access standards, which are specifically detailed in Appendix G of the County Rural Area Roadway Standards. The appeal is being submitted because the subject roadway segments that are used to access the properties do not meet all required sections of Appendix G. If the application is approved, the properties and the owners, they will be applying for short-term rental approval through a separate administrative special review process. So there are various sections included in Appendix G with regards to roadways, but the specific sections that apply specifically to safety and adequacy of access for these roadways include road width, road grade, horizontal curves, and dead end and turnarounds. So the specific requirements of each of these sections are listed on the screen, and these are the applicable sections for review today. So if there's a specific roadway that does not meet one of these Appendix G sections, there are 2 ways that an applicant can request a variation. So if there's a requested deviation that's less than 10% of the standard, we would classify that as a minor variation. That could be approved administratively by the development review engineer. However, if there's a deviation request that's more than 10% of the standard, we would classify that as a major variation, and that has to come in the form of an appeal to the Board of County Commissioners for decision. So with regards to the 3 subject properties and the 4 applicable section or Appendix G sections, those that are highlighted in white could classify as minor variations and could be approved administratively. Those sections that are highlighted in blue are classified as major variations and are presented to the commissioners today in the form of an appeal for your review and decision. If the sections that are in blue that are in the form of an appeal are approved, the owners could then submit for administrative review and approval for the minor variations. Community notice of the application was provided to 234 property owners within the Wincliffe subdivision. To date, we have received 2 written community member comments. One had general questions about the process, and one was received who was in support in general of the appeal but did have related concerns. These comments are provided in attachment G of the packet and also in the staff memo that was provided to you earlier today. Various internal and external agencies did have a chance to review this application. 2 out of the 5 agencies that were notified did provide comments, and 3 out of the 5 agencies notified did not provide comments. When considering whether to approve an appeal to a deviation of a standard or requirement in the land use code, the county commissioners must consider the following 5 criteria, which can be found in Article 672B5 of the land use code. Staff has found that 2 out of the 5 criterion have not been met, and staff has found that the other 3 out of the 5 criterion have been met. And the details and discussion of each of these criterion are in the staff report. Therefore, the Development Services team is not making a specific recommendation on this application and has presented all information to the county commissioners that they may use to base their deliberation and decision. Therefore, there are 2 suggested motions for the county commissioners to consider. The county commissioners can deny the application, or they may approve the application subject to 2 conditions of approval. I would also like to note that the county commissioners do have the option of making a motion and decision for each of the subject properties separately if they so choose. And lastly, I would like to note that if this application is approved, if there are any other homes that are located along these subject roadway segments that also want to apply for a short-term rental, they would not have to reapply for this same appeal, and they could just apply for an administrative special review for short-term rental approval. So with that, myself and Connor Sheldon with engineering are happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samantha. And I may have neglected to mention that the full hearing, now we have an opportunity, the commissioners, to ask questions of staff. And once we're done with that, then we would invite the applicant up to do a presentation. We would have some discussion there, and then we would open it up for public comment, both in person and perhaps people that may be online. Close public comment once we know that is the case, and then the applicants would have an opportunity to offer rebuttal or perhaps response to any of the public comment that we may receive either in person or via online. And so far, we've received 2 emails, as has been mentioned, and that's all that I or we are aware of. So with that in mind, colleagues, do you have any questions of Samantha or Connor? Commissioner Shattuck McNally, any questions or comments, please?
Not at this time, maybe later. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Stevens?
I don't have any at this time.
Thank you. Can you, or, well, Connor's up there, can you say a little bit more, as one of the referring agencies, the engineering department, some of your insights into this application, Connor?
Sure, yeah. So when we were reviewing this one, we were taking into account the fact that we had just recently adopted new short-term rental standards for roadway certification. With that in mind, though, this property had provided it was unique in a number of ways. One, in that it was just recently rezoned to allow for short-term rentals. So we also wanted to note that. And then also in that they provide several other sort of mitigation measures that are very uncommon or we wouldn't see often in most short-term rentals that we review. As you know, we see lots of short-term rental applications, and most of them are very similar. This one, however, and I'm sure the applicant will get into this with their presentation, provided a number of things that the engineering department weighed pretty heavily. The ones that I'll just point out are they have a paved road with a robust maintenance program. They had a horizontal curve that full-size emergency service vehicles could not navigate, but they redid that. So we did receive comment from the Fire Protection District that they can now reach all areas of Windcliff. So emergency services vehicles being able to reach all areas is also something that the engineering department weighed pretty heavily. And then they maintain their own snow removal equipment, and they pave these roads in the winter. And then the last thing is they have a fully staffed gatehouse at the entrance that provides directions to on-site short-term rental users. So those are all things that we do not typically see of short-term rentals in the Estes Valley. So we did have to take into consideration that, they are not meeting the code that we just adopted, which is to meet our Appendix G short-term rental certification of adequate access standards, or be within a 10% deviation. But they have mitigation measures that a lot of other places don't. Hence the no recommendation. Happy to answer any other questions as well.
No, Connor, thank you. That's very helpful. I believe I have one more question of Samantha. And in light of the described mitigation measures that you just shared and that we've read about in our packet, looking at the appeal review criteria, it does indicate that the first two have not been met. So I would like to better understand the intersection between review criteria that have, quote, not been met, and yet this is a very unique situation because typically we have to demonstrate that all of the review criteria are met. So I hope that question makes sense. And that could be a lawyer question, I'm not sure.
Sure, I'm happy to try to speak to it, and if Christine can step in, that's great too. So you are correct that as the county commissioners, you have to find that all criteria have been met. However, as Connor said, specifically with regards to criterion A into criterion E, which I'm happy to pull back up if you'd like. So criterion A specifically talks about that the approval of the appeal will not subvert the purpose of the standard or requirement. So as Connor said, these standards were recently adopted in June of last year. And the reason for these access roadway standards and why they were adopted was to ensure that there was safe and adequate access for short-term renters, emergency services, and other people accessing the homes. However, as Connor said, Windcliff Estates is unique to other properties in the county and Estes Valley in the fact that they have these other mitigation measures that they've put in place. And so from a staff perspective, we could not come up with a conclusive determination whether that criterion has been met or not, because technically the appeal is subverting the purpose of the standard, but they have provided certain mitigation measures. With regards to criterion E, it's very similar to criterion A. It reads, approval of the appeal is consistent with the intent and purpose of the code. So again, staff answered it very similar to criterion A in that, these access roadway standards were just recently adopted. They were adopted for a reason. There are these mitigation measures in place, and there was a rezoning that was recently approved, for the properties in the Windcliff Estates subdivision. That does not necessarily mean that an appeal to the roadway standards automatically should be approved. But again, it was this sort of conundrum where staff could not make a conclusive determination, which is why we've left it up to the county commissioners to deliberate and decide.
Your responses are most helpful. Thank you, and appreciate leaving it up to us to help address the conundrum. I don't have any other questions. Colleagues, do you have any questions of our staff? Yes, Commissioner, please.
You all worked on these standards, and we went through a long process to come to these conclusions for a lot of really important reasons. And some of those reasons came to bear over the last few months, why we be concerned with like evacuations and fire evacuations and things like that. And so that when you talk about snow removal, that's fine. But when you're trying to get down a curve and a tight and a thing with folks who are not used to the area, and that's also something I still think about. So when we have all three properties having at least three of the at least three appeals. They have four, but there's two that they kind of are in the white. I know they said they fixed those, but road grade is all of them are all above 10%, and we do have some experience with some other areas that had that grade and how much that's been a really huge challenge for the neighbors and other things. So I'm curious, because you can clear the road, but when it gets icy, it's still very slick. So that to me still is a concern in an evacuation. So those all still are above the 8% on all of those, correct? And that can't be changed unless you're doing a lot of road work.
You're correct that it can't be changed. And the way that Appendix G reads is above 10% grade for a stretch of 200 feet or greater. And so each of the properties have, small sections of the roadway that are above that. We use 12% for mountainous, for sections that are slightly longer than 200 feet. So I will say it's not that the entire roadway system is very steep. We do have areas of the county where everything is well above it. This is more of a roadway network where certain stretches of it exceed the standard by greater than 10%, a 10% variation. So think stretches of, up to 13 or 14% for slightly longer than 200 feet. It's not the entire roadway network, it's just small stretches.
But still there and still a challenge, and still did not meet the criteria for that.
That is correct.
Okay. And then can you discuss, I guess since, Commissioner asked this question, I was going to wait till after the applicant, but let's talk about the dead end turnabouts. Was that addressed, or was that just the horizontal curves? Which one was addressed with that they spent money on to address?
They spent money to address the horizontal curve such that emergency services can now reach all areas of the Windcliff Estates. There are still certain horizontal curves that don't meet the standard or within a 10% deviation. So they do still need the appeal to the horizontal curve. They have, this is typical of mountainous roadway systems that the horizontal curve would not meet our current Appendix G standards. So they do still need the appeal, but the main one, the problematic horizontal curve to fire specifically, was the one that was addressed.
Okay, it's because I think that's maybe not quite clear, is that because it sounded like it got addressed, but the other ones, they still need the appeal because there's several that don't meet that criteria.
That's correct, yeah.
And then can you talk about the dead end and turnabouts? Because once you get a fire truck or something back there and if they can't get, it takes them 3-point turns or something to get back out in case they go up the wrong road or something, that's still a concern, correct?
Yeah, so with our current Appendix G standards, we need dead end and turnarounds that are official turnarounds built to our standards, specifically for emergency services. In this situation, the engineer has shown where turnarounds are that can be used. They don't meet the standard, but they are they would work for emergency services to get turned around. And then they've also provided, information that they believe in an area like this that has been rezoned for these properties to allow short-term rentals. It's the engineer's opinion that driveways in this area can be used as turnarounds for typical passenger vehicles. These are not like emergency service vehicle turnarounds, but if you're a typical passenger vehicle that needed to get turned around, you could use a driveway with the roadway network Now that's not typically something that we allow. These are private driveways. If short-term rentals want to propose that, we take it into consideration. But in an area that's been rezoned to allow short-term rentals, this is another reason that we wanted to leave it up to the commissioner, because that's not really an engineering decision.
Right, and so I know and Connie, you don't need to answer this question, but I do know staff, well, we did these and worked hard on these. It was, this area went and had played for rezoning just because they had so many and they wanted to be able to not have to separate. It did not mean, they accepted that there was all the other criteria that they would have to meet. It wasn't like, okay, just because you're zoned just means all the criteria out the window. And I still feel like that's an issue to me. It's just, that kind of, just because they're zoned, they got a special special zoning because of their long history. But that doesn't mean the rest of the criteria for public safety and turnabouts is, if it was just like one, but there's four in almost each one. So I'm just to me, that kind of doesn't, just because it's zoned doesn't mean that it kind of says it for me thinking that way. I'm probably in deliberation right now, but I'm just curious about that. So you've answered my questions, Connor. I don't expect you to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good points. One additional question that I have before we consider inviting the applicants up, and that is, could you, Connor, or perhaps Samantha, weigh in on or share some of the comments from the Estes Valley Fire Protection District? I believe they're one of the referring agencies, and we did receive comments from that. And I wondered what their thoughts were on the turnarounds and things of that nature.
Sure, I'm happy to speak to that. The Estes Valley Fire Protection District was referred the application. They did not initially provide comments sort of in the initial referral period, so I followed up with them because it's important that we heard from them and their feedback. They essentially provided just general feedback about the application. They said that, the Windcliff neighborhood is fully paved. They indicated that they take extra measures to ensure the roads are plowed during the winter. And that there are fire hydrants that are accessible throughout the neighborhood. They did not specifically speak to the Appendix G sections that are being appealed or any concerns with horizontal curves or dead-end turnarounds, but they generally seemed supportive of the appeal and that they had no concerns navigating the neighborhood. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Samantha. I don't have any other questions, colleagues. Commissioner Stevens, you're good for now? Okay. Anything else, Commissioner?
I'll hold my questions for later. Thanks.
Okay. So we are now at the point in the hearing where we would invite the applicants. How many folks here are there are three properties in question. By a show of hands, who is wanting to present? Is it one person or? Two of us. So for the different properties? We're going to address collectively with the engineering report and all of that. So please come on up. And typically we allow up to 10 minutes. Can you tell us how much time you think you'll need for your presentation?
We should not go much more than 10 minutes. If we do, it's only a minute or two at most.
Okay. So we'll use that as a time frame. And hopefully you figured out the routine a bit. And it would be great if you could introduce yourself and what is your connection to this matter?
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Sandra Smith, and I am counsel for the homeowners. I also happen to be a longtime homeowner in Windcliff. I've owned my home for 20 years, and I'm a full-time resident of Windcliff for the past 3 years. I am with Smith & Willett, firm in Estes Park, recently opened firm. It seems to me that essentially what we're looking at here in terms of the review criteria that you need to employ or look at in terms of evaluating the issues here are twofold. One is whether the appeal subverts the purpose of the standards, and also whether it is consistent with the intent of the standard. And both of those, as Samantha pointed out, are a little bit similar. I brought up Appendix G here so that we could all look at what the intent and purpose of Appendix G is in terms of what it states its intent and purposes are to be. And first, of course, is that roadways should balance the desire to preserve the natural terrain and landscapes of rural areas in the county while maintaining fairness and respect for individual rights. And then the intent to encourage roadways that fit with the natural terrain while providing safe, functional roads with maximum creativity being encouraged. And one of the things that is pointed out by the drafters here that worked obviously very, very hard on this is that the standards represent an idealized situation where few physical constraints exist. But as noted here, many rural areas in Larimer County possess unique physical attributes that make it necessary to construct roads to fit the individual site circumstances. And that seems to be that so long as that's an okay thing, so long as road safety and emergency access is maintained. So it really boils down to two considerations for you to focus upon. One is the unique physical attributes and the site circumstances, and then emergency access and roadway safety. Taking those in order, the first one, unique physical attributes and site circumstances. This is a mountainside community. There's roughly 2,000 feet of elevation gain between the road and the highest home that is on the mountain, probably maybe a little less than that. Obviously, to build a road in an environment like that, you need to consider the terrain, the topography, the fact that you're a mountainside community, and obviously to try to make it as safe as possible. And I think that as I pointed out, that Appendix G's drafters contemplated the notion that there would be circumstances such as these in mountainside communities like Estes Park, where you'd have to consider the terrain and the site circumstances. In G.7 of Appendix G, it also says that deviations can be considered for mountainous and hilly terrain, particularly as it applies to road grade. And in fact, there are grades far exceeding the 13% or 13.5% that we're talking about here, which is a slightly more than a 10% deviation from the standards here, the strict standards here, that are far exceed that, sometimes 17%. And these are public roads in the community that visitors to Estes Park frequently attempt to navigate, both summer and winter. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that, as the county engineering report said, Winscliff's access routes here are generally in conformance, this is in their report, with the standards with only minor deviations that they could not approve administratively because they slightly exceeded the 10% deviation that they can handle administratively. So looking now at 6 here. I want to take now roadway safety and emergency access. Looking first at emergency access. You asked, Commissioner, about the EVFPD. Well, their letter specifically said that the woman who wrote it, the official with the fire department that wrote the letter, said she had just spoken with the chief. And then she wrote, "We do not have any issues with this. I was surprised this was coming up. Wincliffe is fully paved. They take extra measures to ensure the roads are plowed during winter, and there are hydrants accessible throughout the neighborhood." So that is where EVFPD comes out on this, and they are up there frequently. I've seen them up there frequently. They've come to my house before, and they seem to be capable of navigating the roads with relative ease. The other issue, of course, is you've heard about the reconstruction of the intersection, but there is, for the entire community, for all of us homeowners and for anyone who's there, very clear fire escape protocols that everybody knows and expects to have to follow if there's a situation like what happened a few years ago. Looking at safety, and specifically with fire safety, I want to address that because the Wincliffe community is a fire-wise community, so it's recognized by the NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, as a fire-wise community, which essentially means, and it has been recognized since 2004 as a fire-wise community, which essentially means that the community forms a committee, and it adopts a multi-year plan to engage in various fire mitigation issues evaluating the condition of the structures in the community, the condition of the property, individual properties within the community, as well as the condition of the open spaces and common areas in the community. And as we pointed out, and as I think you heard a little bit about, there's also very robust year-round maintenance of the roadways in Windcliff. We have 2 full-time employees that are devoted to road safety and infrastructure safety and infrastructure generally. And the roads are, what they do is they remove potential obstacles. They had to remove a gigantic boulder, and I think they may have injected it with something. They did something to remove a large boulder that could potentially have come down on the road. They remove and trim trees. They pave, they repave, they regrade, they patch. And then, of course, the community owns its own snow removal equipment and maintains completely snow-free or snow-cleared roads as much as possible during the winter. There is clear road signage everywhere throughout the community, so posted speed limits, direction for large vehicles, because there are certain roads that serve large vehicles more effectively than others, and so they're clearly directed to use those roads that access all the homes. Uphill traffic has the right-of-way. There are clear signs related to that. And there are also one-way roads in several places where there is no need to turn around because the road just loops and you can go back around the other way. There is an issue here, too. This is the FireWise certification that I pulled up just so that you could see that they're a FireWise communication. I'm sorry. These were... There is an issue here that potentially is a gateway issue for all of the homes in the community, and that is that one of the grades at issue, actually the steepest grade on a main road that is at issue here, is actually at the very entrance to Windcliff. You can see where spur 66 is here, and where I've drawn that green box is just around the first bend, just past the gatehouse, where the steepest grade at issue on a main roadway in any event is located. And if there is no deviation allowed for that grade in particular, there would be no ability for any homeowner above that, obviously, to obtain a license. And I put the vicinity map so that you could see it. Spur 66 is on the left, and you can see that first turn in the road there at the top left of the screen is what is the grade that we're talking about. So I also want to address in terms of the other purpose of the appendix, and that is protecting visitors to the mountain. I think we all want to protect visitors to Estes Park generally, and it is a mountain community, and the appendix does definitely lend itself towards accommodating people who live in a community like ours, where the grades are steep, it can be steep, and visitors can find themselves on roads that have curves on them. But there are a lot of visitors beyond short-term renters to the Windcliff community. There's the pizza delivery people, the UPS drivers, the FedEx drivers, visiting family and friends from out of state, all kinds of people who visit this community. And they, too, come from places that are not necessarily like ours, a mountainous community with roads that have to adapt to that particular environment. So I just would ask that you would approve the appeal. It's consistent, I believe, with the intent and purpose of Appendix G. The maintenance standards, again, there's a maintenance facility or a gatehouse, again, at the very entry to Windcliff, which assists any short-term renters driving, as well as denying could result in denying all Windcliff owners access. And I would now like to ask the engineer. His name is Lonnie Sheldon.
So I guess I should, I know 2 people raised their hands, and maybe I wasn't clear that 10 minutes is typically allotted for the applicants. You're representing the 3 property owners, is that correct?
I am, yes, and so is the engineer. He also, when we spoke to staff, they believed it was important for him to come up and address some of the
I would-
specifics of the 4 areas of concern: the curves, the width, the grade, and the turnabouts. And so he is the second person presenting on
That's fine.
our behalf.
Then I can make the decision. Please come on up, but I think we're going to look at a shorter amount of time. I should have made it clear that who was here, I mean, 2 hands went up, and it wasn't clear to me as the chair that it would be 2 people presenting. So
Okay,
we're fine. Why don't you come on up?
I'm
And
sorry, Commissioner.
You don't need to be. It's probably on my end.
Mr.
Please.
Chair,
Yes?
can we at least define a time? Are you giving him?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. I don't know, you're doubling it. It just doesn't, other applicants don't get more than 10 minutes. So I just.
Well,
wanna be
there's some variation on that, and I have that discretion. So, sir, you're the engineer. We have all the reports that you submitted. How much time do you think you need? And we really do want to keep it to 5 minutes or less.
I can do it in less than 20 minutes. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yes, I'm glad you are.
4 minutes?
4 minutes is good. Let's time that, please. And again, if I wasn't clear, then I take responsibility for that. 4 minutes, please. If you would be kind enough to identify yourself.
Absolutely.
And also it would help me, both of you are a bit on the tall side, so you're going to have to bend over a tiny bit or pull that mic up so I can hear better.
Yeah, thank you.
Real quick, Mr. Sheldon, would you like the PowerPoint still up, or is there something else you'd like to share?
Yeah, it's slide 14.
14?
Thank you, folks. Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Lonnie Sheldon with Van Horn Engineering, and I've been up there for quite a while and was sitting in Connor Sheldon's chair about 30 years ago. So that's an interesting side note. 2 Sheldons in the same chair. This first slide, regional Estes Park grades. So what about this percent grade? You know, we got this 12% maximum. So I took, here's some areas around Estes Park and how they compare to 12% maximum, and also road width. The switchbacks at Glenhaven, 21% grade. 36 foot wide, that's a good thing, but they're steep. Castle Mountain, 17%, Lumpy Ridge, 12, and less than the 20 wide. Evergreen in town, the Bighorn Drive in town exceeds the standard. Hines Parkway exceeds the standard. Windcliff, you see it lower left there, 14 and 18. Carriage Hills is the next slide, Samantha, and we studied Carriage Hills a little bit. Oh, excuse me. This is the stretch of 13.5% grade at the beginning of the road. It looks pretty tame in a picture. Of course, it's different when you're walking on it and driving on it. Next slide is the Carriage Hills. And we studied this other area of Estes Park quickly because there's a similar amount of short-term rentals, and it's about a 50-year-old subdivision. It's about the same as Windcliff. And if you look at some of these grades and some of these widths in Carriage Hills, you know, bottom center, 24% grade, twice the standard, 16 feet wide, under the 20 foot. I'll let your eyes parade around there and look at how those standards vary, but it's pretty remarkable how these subdivisions succeed and they work and they don't have accident histories, but they violate the standard of Appendix G. So is the standard a bad standard? I think not. I think it's a good standard, but it's a design standard. It's hardly a standard to compare a 50-year-old subdivision against. You need a little latitude, and it's obvious that the subdivisions can work, but they need your help. They need a little latitude to get through the shortcomings of the actual numerical standards. I'm going to run through real quick grade. I got a couple minutes. Grade, it's a chip seal road surface, so it's got good traction up in Windcliff. The other subdivisions have steel wheeled rolled pavement, which is slicker in the winter. So they chose a good paving section. They've got their own plowing right there on the mountain. That's very unique for this subdivision. I'm going to jump around to make it quick. The 20-foot width standard is for 2 fire trucks to pass, but we talked about the numerous pullouts and driveways. The narrowest we have is 18 feet, which is that 10% off. That one-way road is 14 feet wide. Want to make sure that we all knew that that was one way. Fire access, not a problem. This curve radii, the responding fire truck in Estes Park is a 107-foot aerial ladder truck. It's their pride and joy. And that truck is 40 feet 2 inches long, and it only takes 38 feet of outside radius to turn that truck. That's the largest vehicle using these roads in an emergency case, and these roads all work for that truck. That's why the fire department said we have no issue. They can get there. That's not a problem for them. Jumping right to my conclusion, 30 seconds. The regional roads in the area exceed the Appendix G standard. It's not uncommon in this mountainous area. Carriage Hills, I showed you, exceeds the standard, not uncommon. Larimer County Engineering, I agree with them totally. They say they're generally in conformance with some minor deviations. I agree. The Fire Authority said no issue. And the best test of time in my 5 seconds is the test of time. The best proof is the test of time. And this has proven that test for 50 years.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Thank you, Lonnie. Okay. Colleagues, any questions at this time? Let's open it up to public comment, and then we can see if there are questions of staff as we proceed. Is there anyone here in person who wishes to offer public comment? Come on up, sir. If you would please identify yourself for the record, and also typically we'll do about 3 minutes or less for public comment.
Sure. Don Darling is my name. I am also a member of Windcliff. I've lived there since 2004 and have built numerous homes. I'm a builder. I've worked closely with Lonnie as well as Larimer County Engineering Department on some of the, and two of the three people that are here are customers of mine. So I'm very interested in what's going on here. I think two of the things I'd like to address on this is emergency exits on the mountain, and then also fire, because that was fairly important. I heard from you. And so emergency wise, there are, I believe, 4 separate fire exit or emergency fire exits, egress throughout the mountain. And they go to another road, which we call the Summer Road. So there are other safety measures for people to get out. Number 2 is 12 years ago, there was a fire that took out a house. It was in October. It was before we had the chip seal, and it was before we had the improvement of the intersection, and the fire department did a marvelous job of getting up there and preventing that fire from going into trees and things like that, because it was a windy day and I was there. And so in much worse conditions, the fire department did a smashing job to help prevent something from going on. So from real life experience of being up there for 20 years, it has improved quite a bit. And in real time, I've not seen any accidents or serious problems, and we have people up there all the time. So that's just a comment from a neighbor.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else who is here in person who wishes to offer public comment? And Christina, is there anyone online who wishes to offer public comment through the Zoom platform or by phone?
We have one hand raised, but if there's anyone else that would like to speak, please raise your hand now. We have a total of 2 people.
I can't hear you.
We have a total of 2 members.
So let's begin. I see a name on the screen, Ellen Doran? Is that
Yes.
person here?
Ellen, you are allowed to speak. Please unmute yourself now.
Hello, my name is Ellen Doran. It's Doiron. And I'm hoping that you will approve this appeal. I live next door to Trey Garland, who is also named in this appeal. We were under construction at the same time, and we share the same access road or driveway, if you want to call it that, to our home. I did not join my neighbors in this approval process. I was just tired out with the building process and opted out at this time, but I did plan to go through the same process to get approval for the rental license and the whole shebang. I purchased my lot in 2018 and had plans to build as soon as possible, but it took until January 2022 to break ground. And I got my certificate of occupancy just this year in 2024. The budget to build our home increased exponentially from 2018 after factoring in the access road requirements and going through the permitting processes. I'm not complaining at all about the regulations, but I'd like to point out that we complied with everything required, and most of those requirements pertain to having safe and adequate access to our homes. The grade of the driveway, the ability for 2 cars to pass in the driveway, room to turn around, and et cetera, everything that you guys have been talking about. I think all of us, as a group of friends and neighbors, made the decision to buy and build our homes prior to any inkling that we would be unable to apply for the rental permits when the time came. My home was meant to be kept in my family for generations. The knowledge that building in a neighborhood where a permit to rent could be applied for was part of my decision to choose Windcliff. If unforeseen circumstances came up, we could mitigate financial factors that would prevent keeping the home in our family. It's my hope that my neighbors, as well as myself, will be granted the ability to apply for rental permits, since we all have been working hard to comply with the stipulations that have been put in front of us thus far. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Ellen. Appreciate that, taking the time. Is there still a third person or a second person online?
Yes, we have Julia Reschiki. I do apologize that I got that name incorrectly. You are allowed to speak. If you could please unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes to speak, and if you could please state your name and spell your last name prior to your comments.
Looks like I'm unmuted. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We can hear you. This is John Kofalis.
My name is Julia Reschke. The last name is spelled Reschke. I'm a Windcliff homeowner, and our family's been enjoying this area for 4 generations, so we've been around a while. Our main concern is a little bit different than the sort of technical engineering input that you're getting. What I'm concerned about is that if this appeal is approved, it will help to usher in unchecked proliferation of short-term rentals in Windcliff. That was my concern when we were in front of the commission earlier this year, and it continues to be my concern. I definitely support the 3 homeowners who are applying right now, but I just wish I would put it in your mind as commissioners that it would not be an ideal situation for Windcliff to have to primarily be a short-term rental community. When we talked about it earlier this year, the people who were backing the short-term rentals were very, very clear that the current percentage of Windcliff that are short-term rentals is about 30%. And the intent was, or their suggestion was that 30% would continue to be stable. I think that it will not. that there will be a lot of pressure to increase the percentage of short-term rentals in Windcliff because of a variety of concerns, VRBOs, Airbnb, just the fact that there's housing throughout Estes Park area that is people are more in demand for. So I realize that's not sort of the focus of the discussion today, but if these situations where people earlier in the year and then now of course a much smaller group of people, if there continues to be one after another of a desire to be able to get more density of short-term rentals, that would not be a good thing. And it also would not be a good thing just for safety, which is what we've mostly been talking about today. To having more people in the community that don't know the roads would not be a good idea.
Julia, thank you very much for your public comment, and thanks to you and your husband for the letter that we received, the email that we received earlier today. So appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Christina, can you check one more time to see if there's anyone else who has raised their hand or indicated that they wish to offer public comment?
If there are any more members of the public that would like to speak on this case, please use the raise hand function now. There are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Before we close public comment, just to check for the record if there's anyone here in person who wishes to offer public comment on this application, this appeal. Very well, then we will close public comment. And as I mentioned earlier, if the applicant's one person wishes to respond to what they've heard, perhaps with public comment, this is an opportunity. Come on up. And could you say your name one more time for me, please?
Yes, of course. My name is Sandra Smith.
Sandra, thank you.
You're welcome. Just addressing the last concern about the desire to sort of cap, if you will, and I'm referring to the letter as well, the number of exemptions that the commission would consider. It sounds a little like an attempt to go back to the cap issue that was discussed in the February hearing. And because doing something new like that or preventing other homeowners from bringing an appeal or requesting an exemption, doing that here without an opportunity for those homeowners to be heard seems to circumvent some of the appeal requirements. The proper remedy, of course, was for an aggrieved party to appeal pursuant to Article 6.3.9.8 of the Land Use Code. And that is, of course, that affords an opportunity to all the homeowners to be heard in the event that they need to. The other issue that was raised is that there might be some sort of proliferation suddenly of short-term rentals, and that all these people are trying to buy homes. There are a number of homes on the market that have been on the market for months and months and months, and they're not moving. People aren't even looking at them. So even since February, this proliferation hasn't happened. It is very common for property management companies to seek to get people to rent their places. I've been receiving those kinds of notices in the mail for years. So I don't think that this is a concern that is very warranted in terms of the what's happening. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Okay, then we can continue moving forward. This is an opportunity, colleagues, if you have any, based on what we've just heard, any questions of staff. And once those questions are addressed, if there are any, then we'll move into deliberation. Do either of my colleagues have questions of our wonderful staff here? Commissioner? Oh. Commissioner Stevens? Yes.
I just have a question that was brought up by the engineer about the paving being different or more grippy, or I don't know
Chip
what
seal.
Right, I know it was chip seal, but I mean, there was some belief that that was maybe a better surface in icing conditions than other surfaces. What do you have to say about that? Thanks.
That I don't believe was included in the engineering report. The engineer did provide reports for each of these three properties. So I haven't had time to look into that. I guess I can't confirm it. Typically, chip seal does have more traction, but on the spot here, I couldn't give you the actual friction numbers or anything like that. But it would track with what I am knowledgeable about.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, grippy wasn't the right word. Traction was the right word.
No,
So,
and I appreciate the
less
question. I was going to ask about chip seal and whether it's grippy or whatever the terminology is. So I appreciate that question being addressed. One other question I have, I think for Samantha, perhaps Christine, excuse me, and that is regarding the folks who sent us the letter, Julia and Wayne Reschke. They brought up the matter, and I think it's been addressed, but they brought up the matter of whether or not we could put an exemption or a cap on how many exemptions for the appeal. And my understanding is we can't do that from a legal perspective. And I'm wondering if somebody could articulate that.
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct. We wouldn't be able to do that. Each property owner has a right to assert the appeals as to their own property, so we wouldn't be able to set a cap for a certain area or a neighborhood, because that would impact other people's property rights in that area.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. I don't have any other questions. Colleagues, do you have any other questions for the staff? Let's see, then we can move into deliberation. Who wishes to go first?
I will.
Okay.
Thank you all for being here in person today. I appreciate it. We've had a long, arduous, rigorous journey through short-term rental regulations in general and for the whole county, and then the Essex Valley, which is a unique and special place, and then also Windcliff, push for this new rezoning. However, and I do appreciate you all being here in person today, and I appreciate the letters. This is a new test and appeal of our land use codes. They haven't even been around for that long. And I do understand the saying, well, this neighborhood has more of a grade and this grade, but those neighborhoods are under the full standards and have to follow all the criteria. They didn't apply for a special variance. And there are certain areas in our county where short-term rentals are probably not a good idea because of the grade, the roads, wildfire risks, ingress, egress, evacuation routes, all kinds of things. For me, looking at 3 different properties with not 1, not 2, but 4 items that were, even though 2 of them are minor on 2 properties, having several of these major deviations to come forward with properties that haven't been around. I think those in 2022 we had started kind of the discussion on short-term rental updates. I just feel that once we start exempting standards, and then this will open the door for all the other properties up and down that they don't have to follow standards. And then there's one neighborhood that doesn't have these roadway conditions, and I think it sets a precedent that we set these new short-term rental regulations, and then we're going to right away kind of make exemptions. If it was just one minor deviation, but there's several, and I understand about wanting to build and rent and make money off of this and all those things and those ideas, but this is a very unique neighborhood. It has, I know where it's at. I've seen it. It's very steep around there, and it's already kind of been asking for variations. So I don't feel that they have met the 3. They have not met the other 2 criteria in Article 6.7.2 B5. I still feel they are not meeting A for approval appeal would not subvert the original purpose or standard of the requirement. I still feel like even with some of the things for the fire trucks to get up there, I still feel like the horizontal curves, not all the horizontal curves have addressed, or the dead end or turnabouts. And E, approval of the appeal is consistent with the intent and purpose of the code. We worked hard on these codes, engineering, and there was a lot of heartache and public input to address these. And when they went and Wincliffe had their hearing, they were fine with having some of the spacing, but they also, went ahead and applied and agreed with the other rest of the standards. So I will not be supporting these applications or these appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Stevens, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for everyone who came out and who came online. I will be supporting the appeal. I do understand that we put standards in place, and I think those standards are important for safety. However, some of my understanding of the engineering and the mitigation measures that were put in place really address some of the standards that we were trying to achieve. So, we are allowed to allow for a deviation if for roadway safety, and I think that their safety measures have been put into place. The paved roads, maintaining the snow removal, the fully staffed gatehouse. To me, that there's been efforts to make sure that these roads are safe, and especially with having the installation of the fire hydrants as well. So I do believe that it doesn't. I do believe it does pass the criteria for number A. The purpose of the standard, like I said, was for safety, and I feel like they've met this requirement in other ways. And then with regard to E, the approval of the appeal is consistent with the intent and the purpose of the code. There again, the intent and the purpose of the code, and we worked on this portion of the code a lot, was to make sure that people would be safe and that fire services could get to those places. Estes Valley Fire Protection District says that they don't have concerns. They can get to all these spaces. And so for those reasons, I will be supporting the appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I also will be supporting the application, and I base that on the information we received today. I appreciate the people who came out in person for public comment. I think there was general support for these appeals from the community. Some of it was qualified support, but in light of the statements from the Estes Valley Fire Protection District regarding issues related to public safety and egress in times of an emergency, in light of better understanding the various mitigation measures that the community, the neighborhood, Wincliffe puts in place with regard to paved roads and addressing some of the other things. I do believe that the two review criteria that are in question, I think that the intent and purpose of those review criteria is being met with the various mitigation measures, and I, as I understand things, we're focused on the local roadway and access standards, which are found in Appendix G, and as this moves forward, it still has to go through a process to be approved, administrative review process to be approved for being allowed to do short-term rentals. So there's another checks and balance, and folks can weigh in regarding matters of the 30% issue, for example, that was raised. So I will support the application with the conditions of approval, and hopefully I've made myself reasonably clear. So with that, I guess Commissioner Stevens, would you offer the motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the Wincliffe Estates Appeal, file number 24 GNRL 0558, subject to the conditions in the staff report, which are as follows. 1, the use of the subject properties as short-term rentals must receive approval through the administrative special review process. And 2, the applicant must seek and gain approval of all applicable minor variations from the Appendix G standards from the Larimer County Engineering Department.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's a proper motion. Colleagues, any further comments, discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
That motion passes 2-1. I believe we have concluded our business for today. It is 4:15 p.m. and we are adjourned.